Hello and welcome to Turntable update number 17. Now in this video I finally fit a high quality linear power supply to my Clearaudio concept turntable. And here it is. The MCRU LDA Linear Power Supply. MCRU, a British company, and it stands for Mains Cables Russ, a rather tacky company name, but they're very highly regarded for their power supplies, which make a huge range of power supplies for a lot of different equipment, and they've won a lot of awards in the British hi-fi press. And here is the power supply that is suitable for my turntable. But let's start at the beginning. I made a previous video where I showed myself swapping out the original Wallwart power supply with an upgraded switch mode power supply, and everything there was done at the spur of the moment, and the video itself was rather a mess. It didn't get the points across clearly enough. People that didn't know anything about it were getting confused, and the people who were technically minded were not happy that some of the points weren't put across accurately. So in this video I hope to redress the balance, and I would say don't watch that video. If you're interested in turntable power supplies, just watch this video instead. Now this is the Clearaudio concept moving magnet turntable, and it comes with an external power supply. It's a Wallwart power supply, or sometimes known as a plug top power supply, and this delivers 12 volts DC with a maximum current of 150 milliamps to the turntable, and it plugs in using a typical little plug, and it plugs in there. And this is sufficiently good for this to work. Now this is spec'd by Clearaudio. It is made in Germany. It is a fairly low noise switch mode power supply, but with the best will in the world, it is a cheap device, and it isn't really hi-fi. They used this simply to cut corners when they made this. They wanted to get this down under a certain price, and using a cheapo power supply like this was one of the ways they could keep the costs down. And one of the ways you can easily upgrade this turntable is to buy a high quality power supply. Now, some of the people in the previous video were wondering why their hi-fi equipment didn't come with a plug with a power supply built in. Now, this, as I say, is known as, a plug top power supply. The power supply is actually built into this box here. It's literally attached to the plug. Now, some hi-fi equipment uses external power supplies, and sometimes they're this type of power supply. But most hi-fi equipment actually has the power supply built into the actual equipment. You'd plug a mains lead directly into the back of here, not a low voltage lead like this from an external supply. But some hi-fi equipment do use external supplies, but they're not always plug top supplies like this. Sometimes they are power supplies like this one, which are used in the previous video, where you actually plug the mains lead here into an IC socket, and then you use the low voltage into the device. But these are external power supplies. The majority of hi-fi equipment has the power supply built in. The other thing that's worth noting is this is very unlikely to be the be-all and end-all of the power supply. What this does, it switches the mains electricity, which in my case is 230 volts, and it changes it AC, and it changes it to 12 volts DC. I haven't opened this up, but there's almost definitely some other power supply components in here helping to control the motor. And it's normally the way these things go. This isn't the be-all and end-all of your power supply, it's just some of the power supply, and usually the voltage conversion part of the power supply, and usually that's all, is external rather than internal. It's certainly the case here. Now this is the power supply that was provided by Clearaudio. It's a basic switch mode power supply. Switch mode's just the type of power supply, it's the way it works. Now switch mode tend to be the type of power supplies used in cheaper power supplies like this, and in cheaper equipment. They're easy and cheap to manufacture, and they're fairly efficient. They don't use too much electricity in the actual conversion process from the one type of, say, mains electricity down to the DC. But they tend to be a little bit noisy. The sort of regulation of the voltage tends to be rather poor, and they're just a sort of rough and ready, get the job done type product. Now, the type of power supply that I tried in my previous video was this Russ PowerPak 2. Now this is also a switch mode power supply, but it is a much higher quality one. It uses various components in here to actually filter the the electrical signal after it has been converted to give a smoother, higher quality output. And I was surprised at how big a sound improvement this power supply brought to the turntable compared with the standard unit. The sound was significantly smoother and more natural sounding, more real sounding. And it really spurred me on to buying a more expensive linear power supply. And this is the power supply that I bought. Now this is a linear power supply. It's a different design to the switch mode, and all things being equal, the linear power supplies are nearly always higher quality. Now it is possible to get very high quality switch mode power supplies as well, but generally speaking the linear power supplies are the ones that deliver the cleaner, more stable power. And the main difference is this actually has a transformer sitting in here, as well as the other components that actually convert the AC mains electricity to the DC, 12 volts DC in this case, power that the turntable actually uses. Now this device, as I say, is made by a British company called MCRU, Mains Cables are Russ, and it's their linear power supply. And then they make lots of models, lots of different voltages for different components. And rather oddly, as you probably already spotted looking at this, it actually comes in two boxes. You have the main unit here, and you have this little unit here. Now the power basically comes out of here, out of the main unit, and comes into this little box before ending up going and actually plugging into the turntable. Now as far as I'm aware, what this little box is another voltage regulator. This has regulated voltage coming out of here, goes through the wire into this second voltage regulation unit, which uses very high quality voltage regulation and smoothing before going to the end where it actually plugs into the device. So you get double regulation, and very, very high quality clean signal is actually plugged into the component that you're using. Which as far as I know is a rather unique way of doing it. I assume the idea is, one, the regulation is actually quite close to where you need it. This power supply can sit a long way from the turntable, comes with a long lead, and the final regulation is close to where it's needed rather than the regulation being miles away from the actual hi-fi component. Also it's regulated twice and it gives greater and smoother regulation. Certainly these power supplies get great write-ups in the hi-fi press. They've won a lot of awards for their performance. So this is, I assume, a good way of doing things. Now, these retail in the UK, I think the basic price is £225, but you can have them spec'd up with higher quality plug, turn it round, and other sort of hi-fi audiophile bits and pieces, Furatech IC plug, which this one has, and Kimber cable internally, which again this one has. And if you spec them up with all the bits and pieces, which is what this one is here, they come in at just under £300, which is not an insubstantial amount of money. But if you start looking around at turntable power supplies, you will find that a lot of them are absolutely massively expensive. This is actually quite cheap compared to a lot of them out there, and is say very good and very highly regarded power supply. Now, I was planning on buying this. I was prepared to pay full retail price, but I knew what I wanted. I waited, abided my time, and I was lucky enough that someone actually put this on eBay for a buy it now at £160, including delivery. So I just jumped on it. I was going to buy it anyway, and it's in the colour that I want. You can either get it in black or silver, I say, with the black bands around it, and I wanted the silver one. And I say it's already fully upgraded, which would be the one I would have gone for. So I was very pleased about that. And as ever, I would say to anybody with buying hi-fi, if you haven't got pots of money, just know what you want. That's important. You don't just buy things willy-nilly. You know what you want to buy, and bide your time. You will probably be able to pick the thing up either on offer or some kind of discount, or you'll be able to pick it up second hand, as I did here, and you will save a substantial amount of money. You can make your money go further, either buy more hi-fi equipment or save the money and spend it on music instead. Now, it's very, very simple to use. As you would expect, there's nothing much to it. It's got an IC socket on here. You plug your IEC mains lead in this case a Russ PowerKord 100. That then goes off to my mains filtration unit on my main hi-fi. And then the little connector there goes into the socket on the turntable, and that's it. Now, because this power supply has a fairly long lead on it, it can sit a long way from the turntable. It means any potential interference caused by the power supply in here and the mains lead are a long way from the delicate and sensitive parts of the stylus and the cartridge and the sort of cabling on the turntable, which is a very nice way of doing it. The second regulator model sits nearby, but that shouldn't be too much of a problem. And as I say, very easy to use. Yeah, it's plug and play, no difficulties whatsoever. Now, what it does is deliver a very clean, stable 12-volt power supply to the turntable. That in turn enables the motor to work very, very efficiently and effectively with the turntable. Now, I've seen other people on YouTube use their phone, iPhone or whatever, with a special app. They put it on the turntable and they'll spin the turntable, and the app on the phone will actually give the revolutions per minute and do so accurately. Now, I don't have that, so I can't test to see whether the platter is moving stably or not. But I assume that is where the improvement comes from. It just makes the turning of the main platter that much smoother and more accurate, and in doing so improves the sound quality. Now, this unit very obviously improves the sound quality over the Wallwart power supply that this comes with, and even over the upgraded switch mode power supply that I was using previously. It really does bring out the naturalness in the vinyl. I do find with cheap vinyl replay, and even with this when it was new using it, it's slightly false in the way that it times. It's crude compared with digital. Digital stuff times so perfectly. You're so used to listening to digital, you come to sort of cheaper vinyl replay and it sounds wrong. It just doesn't sound real. But something like this is getting the replay of this much closer to that real sort of natural sound that you expect when you listen to music. And I have to say, I'm very, very pleased with the purchase, and it's going to be here for the duration. You know, this is the power supply that I use with this turntable. It really is job done. I certainly won't be upgrading it for anything else in the future. And while it's a lot of money for a power supply, and it has to be said, it's also quite a lot of money for the percentage gain you get in sound quality. The gain is very worthwhile, but it's relatively subtle. It's not as big a gain as you'd get from, say, replacing a cartridge. And for the cost of this, if it was new, it would have been £300. Could have got a decent cartridge for £300, and it would have made a bigger difference to the sound quality than this. But this power supply sets my turntable up very, very well for when I do get a cartridge. And the other thing is, and this is quite important, the stylus on a cartridge wears out fairly rapidly. And if you bought an expensive cartridge, it's going to be rather an expensive business replacing that stylus when it does wear out. This power supply, on the other hand, is going to last, what, 20 years minimum, maybe 30. And even then it should be quite easy to repair. It'll just need recapping. So as a long-term investment, it is money well spent, and it's something I would definitely advise people doing to their turntable before you start using things like exotic cartridges on your setup. Give a very, very worthwhile improvement to the sound quality that you could not get in any other way. It has to be through the power supply. So that's it, my new linear power supply for my Clearaudio concept turntable, the MCRU LDA Linear Power Supply, with all the upgrades that were available. And it's a very, very highly recommended unit. It's a superb power supply. I have tried it on several of my other components that also use 12 volts DC, and I got huge benefit in sound quality right across the board with everything. Very, very impressive piece of kit. And I say highly recommended. They're UK models and they're made for UK voltages. I don't know whether they make them for different voltages abroad. But I say, if you're in the market for a power supply and they do make one that is suitable for your equipment, I can't recommend the unit highly enough. And that's it for this turntable video. Thanks for watching.